The rumble started 6 blocks away. Mrs. Chun paused mid-sweep outside her corner store, feeling the vibration through the concrete. The hanging baskets of orchids trembled. Car alarms chirped nervous warnings. Then came the sound itself, a rolling thunder of chrome and horsepower that made windows rattle in their frames. 20 Harley-Davidsons turned onto Main Street in perfect formation, 2 columns of 10, their engines a synchronized roar that drowned out every other sound in downtown Riverside. At the front rode a man whose very presence commanded attention. Silas Viper Cross, president of the Iron Sentinels Motorcycle Club, his salt and pepper beard braided, his cut, the leather vest bearing the club's patches, worn like armor. The stoplight at 5th and Main blazed red. 20 bikes slowed to a halt, engines idling in a bass rumble that vibrated through chest cavities and made small children press their hands over their ears. Pedestrians stopped to stare. A few pulled out phones to film. The Iron Sentinels were local legends, rough men who rode the line between outlaw and protector, depending on who you asked. Silas checked his watch and swore under his breath. 4:47 p.m. They had 13 minutes to make a 5 p.m. sit-down with the Desert Vipers, a meeting meant to prevent a territory war that would paint the streets red. The scheduled route would take 22 minutes, but the shortcut through the old river tunnel would take 8. He revved his engine, a 1,200 cubic centimeters beast named Lucifer, and glanced at his sergeant-at-arms, a mountain of a man called Tank who rode beside him. Tank nodded. They both knew the tunnel. Dark, damp, unused except by the occasional shortcut-seeking local. Perfect. Silas's gloved hand gripped the throttle. The lights cycled from red to yellow. His muscles tensed, ready to unleash 700 pounds of steel and fury the instant the green appeared. That's when the blur came from the right. A shape exploded from the shadowed doorway of a boarded-up pawn shop. Small, fast, desperate. Before Silas could process what he was seeing, the figure launched itself at his bike with the reckless abandon of a suicide jumper. A boy, maybe 10 years old, skinny as an alley cat, dressed in clothes that were more holes than fabric, his face smudged with grime, his eyes wild with something that looked like terror. The kid's filthy hand shot toward the ignition. Hey, Silas started. The boy's fingers closed around the motorcycle key and yanked it free with a violence that spoke of pure desperation. Lucifer's engine died instantly. The sudden silence was shocking. 19 other engines continued their rumble, but the absence of the president's bike created a void that everyone noticed. Heads turned. Confused murmurs rippled through the formation. Silas moved on pure instinct. His hand shot out and seized the boy by the collar of his tattered jacket, lifting him clean off the ground. The kid weighed nothing, 70 pounds soaking wet. He dangled there like a caught fish, his dirty sneakers kicking air 6 inches above the pavement. You got a death wish, rat? Silas snarled, his other hand cocking back into a fist. The boy had just committed the ultimate disrespect. You didn't touch a man's bike. Ever. And you sure as hell didn't touch the president's bike in front of his entire club. The kid didn't struggle. He didn't cry. That's what froze Silas's fist in mid-swing. The boy looked him dead in the eye with an intensity that didn't belong on a child's face. His small chest heaved with panicked breaths, but his gaze never wavered. And he clutched that silver key to his chest with both hands like it was the Hope Diamond. Don't go through the tunnel, the boy gasped, his voice cracking with urgency. Please, don't go down that road. They're waiting. If you go in, you die. All of you. The world seemed to stop. Silas held the boy at eye level, processing. The kid smelled like wet cardboard and stale smoke. He was trembling, vibrating like a plucked guitar string. But his eyes, bright, intelligent, desperate, didn't look away. Think had killed his engine. So had the riders behind them. In the sudden relative quiet, Silas could hear the boy's rapid breathing, could see the genuine fear etched into his young face. Not fear of Silas. Fear for him. What are you talking about? Silas demanded, lowering the boy slowly until his feet touched the ground, but keeping an iron grip on his collar. The old river tunnel, the boy whispered, pointing a shaking finger toward the dark underpass 2 blocks west. I sleep in the maintenance vents. Above the ceiling. I heard them. Men with red scorpion tattoos on their necks. Tank leaned forward. Red scorpions? That's Vargas. The Coyote Cartel. They came last night. The boy continued, words tumbling out faster now that they were listening. With duffel bags. Heavy ones. They climbed the support pillars. The third one, the one in the middle, they taped blocks to it. Plastic bricks with wires and little red lights blinking. And they laughed. His voice cracked. They said when the loud bikes come through, they push the button. They said bury the dogs. That's what they called you. Dogs. Silas felt ice water flood his veins. C4. Vargas wouldn't face them in a fair fight. The coward would collapse a tunnel on their heads. Why should I believe you? Silas asked, though instinct was already screaming that the boy was telling the truth. The kid shrugged, a small, heartbreaking gesture. Last week, one of your guys gave me a sandwich. The big one with the beard. He pointed at Tank. The coyotes, they kicked my dog when he barked at them. Broke his leg. Tank's jaw clenched. Silas looked at the tunnel entrance visible in the distance. Just a dark semicircle cut into the hillside. A shortcut he'd taken 100 times. A tomb. He looked back at the boy, really seeing him now. Clothes that hadn't been washed in months. Fingers with dirt ground so deep into the creases it would never fully come out. A kid who lived in air vents and survived on scraps. A kid who had absolutely nothing to gain by lying and everything to lose by getting involved. A kid who had just committed grand theft motorcycle key to save 20 lives. Silas released the boy's collar and gently, carefully, took the key from his small hand. What's your name, son? Leo. The boy swallowed hard. But everyone calls me Rat. Not anymore. Silas straightened and raised his voice so the entire formation could hear. Kill your engines. All of you. We've got a situation. The Iron Sentinels pulled into the parking lot of an abandoned strip mall 3 blocks from the intersection. 19 riders formed a protective semicircle around their president as he crouched down to the boy's eye level, one knee on the cracked asphalt. Leo, Silas said quietly, I need you to tell me everything you heard. Every detail. Lives depend on it. The boy nodded, his eyes serious beyond his years. I was sleeping in the north vent, the big one that runs along the ceiling. It gets warm there because of the steam pipes. He spoke quickly, like he was afraid they'd stop listening. I heard voices around midnight. For men, maybe 5. They had flashlights. I looked through the vent grate and saw the scorpions on their necks. The tattoos. You're sure it was scorpions? Think asked. Not snakes. Not spiders. Scorpions, Leo confirmed. Red ones. Curved tails. One guy had it right under his ear. He touched his own neck to demonstrate. Silas exchanged glances with Tank. That was Vargas's signature. Every full member of the Coyote cartel wore one. What did they do? Silas prompted. They went to the 3rd support pillar, the concrete one in the middle of the tunnel. The leader, he had a scar across his nose. He took out blocks from a black bag. Gray blocks. Like clay but harder. He pressed them against the pillar and they stuck. Then he pushed wires into them. Red wires and blue wires. He was real careful, like he was scared they'd go off. Leo's description was too specific to be fabricated. No 10-year-old kid knew about detonator wires unless he'd seen them. How many blocks? Asked a rider named Ghost, the club's former army demolitions expert. Leo closed his eyes, remembering. 8. No, 9. 3 on each side of the pillar, facing different directions. Ghost's face went pale. That's a shaped charge. Directional blast. It would shear that pillar like a knife through butter. The whole ceiling section would come down. Silas stood, his decision made. Ghost, I need you to confirm this. Take the tunnel on foot. Approach from the west side, stay in the shadows. If Leo's right, radio back immediately. If he's wrong, he looked down at the boy. Well, we'll cross that bridge. Ghost nodded and jogged toward the tunnel, disappearing into the lengthening shadows of late afternoon. The wait was agony. Silas paced while his men stood in tense silence. Leo sat on the curb, hugging his knees to his chest, looking like he expected them to turn on him at any moment. Tank walked over and sat down next to the boy. From his cut pocket, he pulled out a slightly squashed granola bar. Here. Leo took it with trembling hands. Thank you. That was you last week. The skinny kid with the 3-legged mutt behind a diner. Leo nodded, tearing into the granola bar like he hadn't eaten in days. He probably hadn't. Your dog okay? Hopper's leg healed crooked, but he can still run. Leo's voice was small. I wanted to get him to a vet, but they want money up front. Tank grunted. We'll take care of that. 7 minutes felt like 7 hours. Then Ghost's voice crackled over the radio, tense and urgent. Boss, the kid was right. See 4 blocks taped to the 3rd pillar, military grade. Red and blue wiring leading to a remote receiver box mounted on the support beam. I can see tire tracks in the dust, multiple vehicles staged near the east entrance. This is an ambush site. If we'd ridden through. He paused. It would have been a massacre. The silence that followed was deafening. Slowly, every member of the Iron Sentinels turned to look at Leo. The scrawny homeless kid sitting on the curb, granola bar wrapper clutched in his hand, had just saved all their lives. Silas walked over and knelt down again. This time, he extended his hand. Leo, on behalf of the Iron Sentinels, thank you. You saved 20 lives today. Leo stared at the offered hand like it might disappear, then reached out and shook it. His grip was weak, his hand child small in Silas's calloused palm. What happens now? Leo whispered. Silas's expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. Now we go hunting. They convened in the back room of Rusty's garage, a motorcycle repair shop owned by a sentinel named Wrench. The space doubled as an unofficial clubhouse, oil-stained concrete floor, walls covered in bike posters, and club memorabilia, a battered conference table surrounded by mismatched chairs. Silas spread a city map across the table. Leo stood on a milk crate so he could see, surrounded by men 3 times his size who now looked at him with a mixture of respect and curiosity. Talk us through the layout, Silas said. Leo studied the map, then pointed. This is wrong. That service door is welded shut, has been for months. And this maintenance corridor doesn't connect anymore. They bricked it up when they shut down the old water treatment plant. How do you know that? Asked a writer named Sketch, the club's intelligence officer. I've walked every tunnel under this city, Leo said simply. When you're homeless, you learn the warm places, the dry places, the places cops don't check. Sketch raised an eyebrow at Silas. The kid was a natural intelligence asset. Show me how they're positioned, Silas ordered. Leo grabbed a pencil and drew on the map. The explosives are here, center pillar. The detonator is mounted on the east side. The men, I counted 4 watching last night. They were standing here and here. He marked 2 positions. They had a clear view of both tunnel entrances, but they were hidden behind these concrete barriers. Smart, Tank muttered. They watch us ride in. Wait until we're past the point of no return, then trigger the collapse. Even if some of us survive the initial blast, they can pick us off while we're trapped in the rubble. Vargas's style, Silas agreed. He doesn't fight fair. Never has. He studied the map, his tactical mind working. If we don't show up, he'll know something's wrong. He'll scatter like roaches, and we'll never get another shot at him. So we hit them, Ghost said. But we can't use the tunnel. No, Silas said slowly, a dangerous smile spreading across his face. We use the tunnel, just not the way they expect. He looked at Leo. You said there's a storm drain that comes out behind their position? Leo nodded eagerly. Yeah, it's old, really old. It connects to the sewer system. You have to crawl for maybe 50 yards, but it comes up through a grate right behind those concrete barriers. I've used it a bunch of times to get to the other side of the river without going over the bridge where the cops hang out. Can it fit a man? A full-grown man. Leo looked at Tank's considerable bulk and winced. Most men, yeah. Him, it'd be tight. I'll suck it in, Tank growled. Silas traced a route on the map with his finger. Here's what we do. Ghost, Tank, Reaper, and Chains. You 4 go with Leo through the storm drain. Come up behind Vargas's men. Radio when you're in position. What about the C4? Ghost asked. Can you disarm it remotely? Cut the receiver wires. If I can get to it without being seen, yeah. But the second they realize we're onto them, they'll detonate. Silas nodded. So we give them something to watch. The rest of us approach the tunnel from the east entrance on the bikes. Loud. Obvious. Just like they're expecting. We stop short of the kill zone. Make it look like engine trouble or something. While they're focused on us, you cut the detonator and take them from behind. It's risky, Sketch said. If timing's off even a little, then we improvise. But right now, this is the only play that gets US Vargas without losing men. Silas looked around the table. We don't run from cowards who plant bombs. We make examples of them. A chorus of agreement rumbled through the room. One more thing, Tank said, looking at Leo. The kid comes with us through the drain. We need him to navigate. Leo's eyes went wide. Me? You know the tunnels better than any of us, Silas said. But Leo, this is dangerous. Combat dangerous. You understand? Men might die tonight. Men will definitely die, Leo corrected, his voice steady. The bad men. The ones who hurt Hopper. Despite the gravity of the situation, several of the bikers chuckled. Kids got stones, Reaper muttered. Silas crouched down in front of Leo. If you do this, if you guide my men through those tunnels, I promise you 2 things. 1, we'll get you and Hopper off the streets. A real place to live. 2, you'll never have to be afraid of Vargas or his coyotes again. Do we have a deal? Leo stuck out his hand. Deal. They shook on it. And in that moment, though he didn't know it yet, Leo stopped being a homeless kid and became something more. He became a sentinel. The storm drain entrance was a rusted grate set into a concrete embankment behind an old industrial building. The last rays of sunlight were fading, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. In 30 minutes, it would be full dark. Perfect. Ghost knelt and pried the grate up with a crowbar. The smell that wafted out was eye-watering. Mildew, stagnant water, and things best left unidentified. Home sweet home, Leo said quietly. Tank looked at the narrow opening and sighed. I've done worse. Leo went first, dropping into the darkness with the casual ease of long practice. He landed in a crouch in about 6 inches of foul water, then pulled out a small LED flashlight, probably salvaged from a dumpster, and clicked it on. Ghost followed, then Reaper in chains. Tank came last, his considerable bulk barely squeezing through the opening. Once they were all down, Ghost pulled the grate closed behind them. The tunnel was a claustrophobic nightmare. Concrete walls slick with moisture and organic growth. The ceiling so low that even Leo could reach up and touch it. The sound of dripping water echoed in the darkness, along with rustling sounds that suggested they weren't alone. Stay close, Leo whispered, his voice bouncing off the walls. Single file. Watch your step. There's a drop-off about 20 feet ahead. Only about a foot deep, but you don't want to fall face first. They moved slowly, their boots squelching in the muck. Ghost pulled out his own flashlight, military grade, much brighter than Leo's. The beam revealed graffiti on the walls, some of it decades old, and the gleaming eyes of rats who scattered at their approach. Leo navigated like he'd been born underground, calling out obstacles before the men could trip over them. Pipe coming up on the right. Duck here, low ceiling. There's a junction ahead. We take the left fork. How do you remember all this? Chains asked, his voice slightly muffled by the bandana he tied over his nose and mouth. I've lived down here for 2 years, Leo said simply. You learn or you get lost. The tunnel narrowed. Tank had to turn sideways and push through, cursing creatively under his breath. Leo waited patiently, then led them through a section where the ceiling was so low they had to crawl. Ghost checked his watch. We've been down here 12 minutes. How much further? Another 30 yards, then up through the grate, Leo said. But we have to be quiet when we get close. Sound carries up through the vents. They continued in silence, nothing but the splash of their movement and the omnipresent drip of water. The tunnel began to slope upward. Leo stopped and pointed up. Above them, a metal grate was visible, faint light filtering through from the tunnel above. And beyond that light, voices. Waste of time, someone was saying. They're not going to show. Boss says they'll show. Another voice replied. They got their pride. Won't back down from a meeting even if they suspect something. Then where are they? It's almost 5. Patience. Leo looked back at Ghost and pointed to the grate, then held up 4 fingers. For hostiles, just like he'd said. Ghost nodded and hand signaled to the others. They gathered beneath the grate, weapons drawn. Ghost and Reaper carried Glocks. Tank had a sawed-off shotgun. Chains preferred his namesake, a length of heavy chain wrapped around his fist. Ghost pressed his radio. Viper, we're in position. For hostiles confirmed, armed with rifles. Standing watch east and west. The detonator is visible on the support pillar, approximately 15 feet from our position. Silas's voice crackled back. Copy. We're approaching the east entrance now. Soon as we're visible, they'll focus on us. That's your window. Viper out. They waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Then, echoing through the tunnel from the east, came the unmistakable rumble of Harley-Davidson engines. Above them, the coyotes reacted immediately. There. You hear that? Finally. Get ready. Wait for them to pass the second pillar. Boss wants them right in the center. Man, this is going to be beautiful. Ghost exchanged glances with Tank. These men had no idea they were standing above their own graves. The bike engines grew louder. Through the grate, Leo could see figures moving. For men in leather jackets with red scorpion patches, rifles held ready. They were all looking east, toward the approaching sound. Ghost pointed at Reaper and Chains, then at the grate. Reaper nodded and positioned himself directly beneath it. Chains handed his chain to Tank and interlaced his fingers, creating a step. Reaper put his boot in Chains' hands. The bike engines were thunderous now, echoing through the tunnel like rolling thunder. The coyotes were transfixed, watching the east entrance. Now, one of them shouted, "Hit it!" A man lunged toward the support pillar, reaching for the detonator. Reaper exploded upward, Chains launching him with all his strength. Reaper's shoulder hit the grate like a battering ram. The rusted metal gave way instantly, flying up and clanging against concrete. Reaper came up through the opening like a demon from hell, his Glock already firing. The coyote reaching for the detonator took 2 rounds to the chest and went down screaming. Ghost was up and through the grate in a heartbeat, rolling right, acquiring targets. Tank squeezed through with the sawed-off and fired both barrels at once, the blast deafening in the enclosed space. The ambush became a massacre in under 10 seconds. The coyotes, focused entirely on the approaching bikes, never saw it coming. They were caught in a perfect crossfire, Ghost and Reaper from one side, Tank and Chains from the other. The confined space of the tunnel became a kill box. One coyote managed to get his rifle up. Chains's chain caught him across the face with a sickening crack. He went down and didn't move. The last coyote dropped his weapon and raised his hands. Don't shoot. Don't. Tank hit him with the butt of the shotgun. The man crumpled. Silence fell, broken only by the idling of motorcycle engines and the ringing in everyone's ears from the gunfire. Ghost moved immediately to the support pillar. The C4 was there, exactly as Leo had described. 9 blocks arranged in a directed pattern, wires leading to a radio receiver. Ghost pulled out a multi-tool and cut the wires cleanly. The blinking red light on the receiver went dark. Clear, he shouted. From the east entrance, 15 motorcycles rolled into view. Silas at the lead. He took in the scene with a single glance. For coyotes down, his men standing victorious, the explosives disarmed. Secure the tunnel, Silas ordered. Sketch, call our contact at the PD. Tell them we have a bomb threat they need to dispose of. Don't mention the bodies yet. The Sentinels moved with military precision, sweeping the tunnel for additional threats, collecting weapons, checking the fallen coyotes for signs of life. 2 were dead. 2 were alive, but unconscious. Tank reached down into the storm drain and lifted Leo up like he weighed nothing. The boy emerged, blinking into the brighter lights of the motorcycle headlamps, looking around at the controlled chaos. Silas walked over and put a hand on Leo's shoulder. You did good, kid. Real good. Is it over? Leo asked. Not quite, Silas said, his expression hardening. We still need to have a conversation with the man who ordered this. The Coyote Cartel's clubhouse was a sprawling compound in the industrial district, a former meatpacking plant surrounded by chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Guard towers at each corner. Surveillance cameras. The works. Normally, it would be suicide to assault directly. But tonight, they had an advantage. Vargas thought 20 iron sentinels were buried under 1,000 tons of concrete. He'd be celebrating, not expecting retaliation. Silas, Ghost, and Sketch sat in a van 3 blocks from the compound, watching surveillance footage on a laptop. Sketch had hacked the Coyote's security cameras with embarrassing ease. 8 guards visible, Sketch reported. 2 on the gate, 2 on each tower, 2 roving the perimeter. Figure at least a dozen more inside. Vargas? Silas asked. 3rd floor, northeast corner. That's his office. Lights are on. Silas studied the screen. A direct assault would cost lives, even with surprise on their side. But there was another way. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he'd hoped never to use. This is Viper, he said when the line connected. I need to speak to the devil. The devil was what people called Marcus Santos, head of the Mexican Mafia in Riverside. The MM and the Sentinels had a complicated relationship, not allies, not enemies, somewhere in the neutral zone defined by mutual respect and non-interference. But Marcus Santos owed Silas a favor. A big one. 2 years ago, Silas had quietly warned him about a federal raid that would have taken down half his organization. Santos had never forgotten. 20 minutes later, Silas sat alone at a table in the back room of a restaurant the MM controlled. Marcus Santos walked in, flanked by 2 bodyguards who looked like they bench-pressed cars for fun. Santos was in his 50s, silver-haired, dressed in an expensive suit. He looked more like a corporate CEO than a crime boss. He sat down across from Silas and gestured. The bodyguard stepped back, but stayed within protective distance. Viper, Santos said, his accent slight. You called in the favor. I'm listening. Vargas tried to kill my entire club tonight. Planted C4 in the old river tunnel. Santos's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. And yet, here you sit. We were warned. The trap failed. Now I need to respond. But his compound is a fortress. You want me to what? Lend you soldiers? Equipment. No, Silas said. I want you to make a phone call. Santos raised an eyebrow. Call Vargas. Tell him you want to meet. Tonight. At his compound. To discuss expanding territory into the docks. Something that would benefit both of you. He respects you. He'll drop his guard. Understanding dawned in Santos's eyes. You want me to be the Trojan horse. I want you to be the distraction. My men go over the fence while he's busy rolling out the red carpet for you. We take him. You turn around and leave. Your hands stay clean. Santos leaned back, considering. And if Vargas or his men see your people? They won't. We've got a man who was Army recon. He could infiltrate the Pentagon if we asked him to. Vargas is Coyote Cartel. If I help you take him down, the cartel will notice. Which is why it has to look like an internal betrayal. We grab him, make him disappear. His lieutenants will assume he was hit by rivals within his own organization. Happens all the time in your world. Santos was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled thinly. You're a clever man, Viper. Dangerous, too. That's why I like you. He pulled out his phone. One call. Then we're even. The favor is paid. Agreed. Santos dialed. Vargas? It's Marcus Santos. Yes, I know it's late. Listen, I have a proposition that I think you'll find very interesting. The dock territory. I know, but hear me out. He paused. Tonight, yes. I'm in the area anyway. Your compound? Perfect. 30 minutes? I'll be there. He hung up and looked at Silas. You have your window. Silas stood and extended his hand. Santos shook it. We're even, Silas confirmed. We're even, Santos agreed. But Viper, don't make me regret this. You won't. Ghost, Reaper, and a sentinel named Phantom, so called because he could move like smoke, sat in the darkness on the roof of a building overlooking the Coyote compound. They wore black, their faces painted with camo grease. Night vision goggles hung around their necks. Below, the compound was ablaze with activity. Vargas had apparently told his men to clean up for the important visitor. Guards scrambled to make the place presentable. Amateur hour, Phantom muttered, watching through binoculars. They're so focused on Santos, they forgot to watch their perimeter. East fence, blind spot between camera cones. Ghost said, studying his tablet. Sketch confirmed, 30 seconds of darkness every time the cameras rotate. That's our entry, Reaper said. They waited. 17 minutes later, a convoy of 3 black SUVs pulled up to the compound gate. Marcus Santos emerged from the middle vehicle, flanked by his bodyguards. Even from a distance, his presence was commanding. The Coyote guards practically tripped over themselves opening the gate. Vargas himself came out to greet Santos, all smiles and fake camaraderie. Now Ghost said. They moved. Down the fire escape, across the alley, to the chain-link fence. Phantom produced wire cutters. The fence parted silently. They slipped through, keeping low, using shadows and parked vehicles for cover. The roving guards had been pulled to escort Santos. The towers were focused inward on the important guest. The sentinels moved like ghosts, hence the nickname, flowing through the compound unseen. They reached the main building. Phantom checked the door. Locked, but a cheap lock. He had it open in 15 seconds. Inside was dark, most of the coyotes having gone to gawk at Marcus Santos. The sentinels moved through hallways lit only by emergency lighting, their boots silent on concrete. Ghost consulted his tablet, where Sketch had uploaded the building's floor plan from city records. 3rd floor. Stairs, not elevator. They climbed. The 3rd floor hallway was empty except for one guard standing outside an office door. He was watching a video on his phone, earbuds in, completely oblivious. Phantom moved behind him like a shadow, one arm around the throat, cutting off the blood supply to the brain. The guard struggled for 3 seconds, then went limp. Phantom lowered him gently to the floor. The office door was heavy wood, probably reinforced. But it was unlocked. Why lock it when you have a guard? Ghost tested the handle, then looked at Reaper and Phantom. They nodded. He pushed the door open. The office was large, expensive. Leather furniture, a massive desk, walls covered in photos of Vargas with various criminals and corrupt officials. A trophy room for a man with no shame. And behind the desk, laughing at something on his phone, sat Vargas. He looked up as they entered. For one frozen second, he just stared, not understanding. Then recognition hit, and his hand dove for the desk drawer. Ghost Glock was already level. Don't. Vargas froze, hand half in the drawer. Out. Slow. I see metal, you die. Vargas slowly withdrew his hand. Empty. Stand up. Hands on your head. Vargas stood, lacing his fingers behind his head. He was smaller than Silas had described, maybe 5'8", wiry build. But his eyes were flat and cruel. The eyes of a man who'd ordered countless deaths without losing sleep. Do you know who I am? Vargas said, his voice steady. The cartel will. The cartel will think you got hit by rivals. Ghost interrupted. Internal politics. Happens every day. Understanding flashed across Vargas's face. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. The tunnel. You knew. We knew. How? You kicked the wrong dog, Ghost said. Zip tie him. Phantom moved forward with plastic restraints. Wait, Vargas said, a note of desperation entering his voice. I can pay. Whatever you want. Money, territory, weapons. We want justice, Reaper said. They bound his hands behind his back, gagged him with duct tape, and threw a hood over his head. Phantom checked the hallway, still clear. Downstairs, they could hear voices. Santos was giving his pitch, keeping everyone distracted. The extraction took 4 minutes. Out of the office, down the back stairs, through a service exit that Sketch had helpfully unlocked remotely, across the compound to the fence. A van was waiting on the other side, Tank behind the wheel. They threw Vargas into the back and climbed in after him. Tank pulled away smoothly, no rush, just another vehicle in the night traffic. Clean, Tank asked. Clean, Ghost confirmed. They won't even know he's missing until Santos leaves. In the back, Vargas thrashed against his restraints. Ghost pressed the Glock against his temple. Be still, or I'll save everyone the trouble. Vargas went still. They took him to a junkyard the Sentinels owned, deep in the industrial wasteland outside city limits. No neighbors, no witnesses, just rusted car hulks and machinery that drowned out screams. Silas was waiting, along with the rest of the club. They'd formed a semicircle in the cleared area behind a mountain of crushed vehicles. Floodlights cast harsh shadows. A single chair sat in the center. They threw Vargas into the chair. Ghost cut the zip ties, but before Vargas could think about running, Tank and Chains grabbed his arms and tied them to the chair with rope. His legs got the same treatment. Only then did they remove the hood and gag. Vargas blinked in the harsh light, looking around at 20 bikers staring at him with expressions ranging from anger to cold calculation. His eyes found Silas. Viper, he said, trying for bravado. You're making a huge mistake. The only mistake, Silas said, walking forward, was you thinking you could bury my entire club and get away with it. It's business. The Vipers offered more territory if you were gone. Just business. You tried to kill 20 men. Some of them have families. Kids. They knew the risks when they put on the cut. Silas was silent for a moment. Then he gestured. Leo stepped out from behind Tank, still wearing the oversized helmet one of the Sentinels had given him. Vargas's eyes widened. Who? This is the person who saved us, Silas said. A 10-year-old kid you wouldn't give a second glance to. He sleeps in air vents because he has nowhere else to go. You kicked his dog because it barked at you. You remember that. Vargas stared at Leo. The rat from the tunnels. His name is Leo, Silas said coldly. And because of him, you failed. Because of a homeless child, your entire plan collapsed. 20 Iron Sentinels are alive. We took your bomb. We infiltrated your fortress. We took you from your own office while your men stood guard. How does that feel, Vargas? Knowing you were beaten by a child. Vargas's face twisted with rage and humiliation. You can't. The cartel will. The cartel won't know it was us, Silas interrupted. They'll think it was your own lieutenants. Or maybe the Vipers double-crossed you. Either way, you'll disappear. Another casualty of the drug war. Wait. But before you disappear, Silas continued, pulling out his phone, you're going to confess. Every crime, every murder, every drug shipment, all of it, on video. I won't. Silas nodded to Tank, who stepped forward and showed Vargas a pair of bolt cutters. We can do this easy or hard, Tank said pleasantly. Start with fingers, move to toes. How attached are you to your kneecaps? The color drained from Vargas's face. Or, Silas said, you confess, give us everything we need to dismantle your organization, and we make your death quick. Painless. You'll just disappear into the foundation of a building we're tearing down next week. Concrete tomb. Nobody will ever find you. Vargas looked around at the circle of hard faces. He was a predator who'd lived by violence, and he recognized when he was beaten. If I talk quick death, you have my word. The word of an outlaw means nothing. The word of an Iron Sentinel, Silas said quietly, is iron. We keep our promises. All of them. Vargas was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly he nodded. The confession took 30 minutes. Silas recorded everything. Names, dates, locations, distribution networks, corrupt officials, murder victims. By the time Vargas finished, they had enough to destroy the Coyote cartel and put a dozen dirty cops in prison. The video goes to the FBI, Silas said when it was done. Anonymous tip. They'll never trace it to us. And me? Vargas asked. Silas looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at Leo. This was your call to make. We're only alive because of you. How do you want this to end? Every eye turned to the small boy. Leo stood there, this tiny figure in the oversized helmet, looking at the man who'd planted bombs and kicked dogs and terrorized neighborhoods. My mom, Leo said quietly. Before she died, she told me that revenge doesn't fix anything. It just makes more pain. He looked up at Silas. But she also said that bad people have to face consequences, or they never stop being bad. Wise woman, Silas said softly. Give the video to the police, Leo said. Let the law handle him. If you kill him, you're no better than he is. Vargas let out a shaky breath of relief. However, Leo continued, and there was something hard in his young voice. He should know what it feels like to be helpless, to be scared, like I was every night in those tunnels. Silas nodded slowly. He walked over to Vargas and cut his bonds. Vargas slumped forward, gasping. You're free to go, Silas said. Vargas looked up, suspicious. What? You heard me. Walk away. But know this. I'm sending that video to the FBI tonight. By morning, every law enforcement agency in the state will be looking for you. Your own cartel will hear about your confession. You'll be hunted by cops and criminals alike. No friends. No protection. You'll run for the rest of your life, however long that is. The full horror of it sank in. Vargas had just confessed to enough crimes to earn multiple life sentences, and the confession would be in FBI hands within hours. He was a dead man walking. You can't. Go, Silas said. Before I change my mind. Vargas ran. Stumbling, terrified, he ran into the darkness beyond the floodlights and disappeared into the maze of junked cars. Tank looked at Silas. You really letting him go? For now, Silas said. FBI will have him in a week. If they don't, someone else will. Either way, Vargas is finished. He turned to Leo. You showed mercy. That took courage. My mom would have wanted it that way, Leo said quietly. Silas put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Your mom raised a good man. She'd be proud. The Iron Sentinels clubhouse was a converted warehouse on the edge of the industrial district. Not fancy, but solid. The main room had a bar, pool tables, a massive TV, and walls covered in motorcycle memorabilia and club history. Tonight, it was packed. Every member of the club was there, plus their families. Word had spread about what happened, how Leo had saved them all. The bikers had decided to throw him a proper welcome. Leo walked in and stopped dead, overwhelmed. The place was decorated with balloons and banners. A buffet table groaned under the weight of food, pizza, burgers, ribs, everything a kid could want. A corner held a pile of wrapped presents. Surprise, someone shouted, and the room erupted in cheers. Leo stood frozen, tears welling up. He'd lived on the streets for 2 years. He'd eaten from dumpsters, slept in air vents, been invisible to everyone. Now he was standing in a room full of people celebrating him. Tank's wife, Maria, came over and hugged him. Welcome home, Leo. I don't. Come on, she said gently, taking his hand. Let's get some food in you. You're way too skinny. The party lasted hours. Leo ate until he thought he'd burst. He played video games with the bikers' kids, who treated him like a hero. He unwrapped presents, new clothes, a tablet, a real flashlight, and from Tank, a promise that Hopper would see a vet first thing tomorrow morning. As the evening wound down, Silas called for quiet. The room settled. Leo stood next to him, feeling small and exposed. Brothers and sisters, Silas said, his voice carrying. 24 hours ago, we were riding to our deaths and didn't know it. We're only standing here because one person had the courage to risk everything to warn us. That person asked for nothing, expected nothing. He just did what was right. He turned to Leo. The Iron Sentinels take care of our own. We voted, and it was unanimous. Leo, if you want it, you have a home here. A real home. We'll get you enrolled in school. Make sure you have everything you need. And when you're old enough, if you still want it, you'll earn your prospect patch. Leo couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears streaming down his face. Silas reached into his cut and pulled out a small vest, child-sized, with the Iron Sentinels logo on the back. No full patch. He was too young for that. But on the front was a special patch that read, Under Protection. This marks you as family, Silas said, helping Leo into the vest. Anyone messes with you, they mess with all of us. The room erupted in applause. Leo wiped his eyes, trying to process that this was real, that he wasn't dreaming. Tank came over with a small 3-legged dog on a leash. Found him at that building you mentioned. Vet says the leg healed crooked, but he's healthy otherwise. He's all yours, kid. Leo dropped to his knees and Hopper bounded into his arms, tail wagging frantically. Boy and dog reunited, and this time there were no tears of sadness, only joy. 2 weeks later, Leo stood in the doorway of his new room, still not quite believing it was his. Real bed, clean sheets, a desk, posters on the walls. Hopper asleep in a dog bed in the corner. The Sentinels had set him up in an apartment above the clubhouse. Maria checked on him daily, making sure he ate real meals and did his homework now that he was enrolled in school. The other kids were wary at first, the new kid with the biker gang connection, but they'd warmed up when they realized he was just a regular kid who'd had bad luck. There was a knock on his door. "Come in," Leo called. Silas entered, looking slightly awkward. The president of a motorcycle club was comfortable leading men into battle, less comfortable with 10-year-olds. "Settling in okay?" he asked. "Yeah, I still can't believe it's real sometimes." "It's real." Silas sat on the edge of the bed. "Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. The FBI got our video. They arrested 3 Coyote Cartel leaders yesterday, plus 5 corrupt cops. It's all over the news." "What about Vargas?" "Found dead in a motel 2 states over. Looks like the cartel caught up with him before the FBI could." Silas paused. "I know you wanted him to face justice legally, but it's okay," Leo said quietly. "He faced consequences. That's what matters. You're wise beyond your years, you know that." Leo shrugged. "My mom used to say that hardship either makes you bitter or better. I'm trying to choose better." Silas smiled. "She must have been quite a woman." "She was." Leo looked down at his hands. "I miss her, but I think she'd be happy I found a family again. We're honored to be that family." Silas stood. "One more thing. Tech. You met him, our computer guy. He wants to teach you some skills. Says you have good instincts for intelligence work." Interested, Leo's eyes lit up. Really? But school comes first. Grades slip, training stops. Deal. After Silas left, Leo walked to the window. Below, he could see the parking lot where the Sentinels' bikes were lined up like soldiers at attention. Men moved about their business, fixing bikes, shooting the breeze, living life. His life had changed in the span of a few seconds. One decision to grab a key, to speak up when he could have stayed silent. And that decision had saved lives, destroyed a criminal empire, and given him a future he'd never dared dream of. He looked at the small vest hanging on his door, the under protection patch gleaming in the light. For the first time in 2 years, Leo felt safe. For the first time ever, he felt like he belonged. 10 years later, the rumble of a motorcycle echoed through the parking structure as a sleek black Harley pulled into a reserved spot. The rider killed the engine and removed his helmet, revealing a young man of 20 with dark hair and intelligent eyes. Leo Rat Cross. He'd taken Silas's last name when he was officially adopted at age 12, swung off the bike, and grabbed his backpack. Inside was his laptop and textbooks. He was a junior at the state university, studying architecture and civil engineering. Tunnel systems, specifically, understanding the bones of cities. He'd earned his prospect patch at 18 and his full patch at 19, the youngest in Iron Sentinel's history. But Silas had insisted he finish college first. "The club will always be here," he'd said. "Education is your foundation." Leo rode the elevator up to his apartment, a real apartment now, in a decent neighborhood. Hopper was waiting at the door, older now, gray around the muzzle, but his tail still wagged enthusiastically. The crooked leg had never slowed him down. On the wall above his desk hung a shadow box. Inside was a silver motorcycle key, mounted on black velvet, with a small brass plaque beneath it. The key that changed everything. June 15th, 2015. Leo had kept it all these years, a reminder of the moment when his life pivoted from darkness to light. His phone buzzed. A text from Silas, "Club meeting tonight. 7 p.m., important." Leo smiled and texted back, "I'll be there, Pops." Silas had never officially adopted the title of father, said Leo's real dad was out there somewhere and deserved the respect of the name. But Leo had started calling him Pops, anyway, and Silas had never objected. As the sun set over Riverside, Leo sat at his desk and opened his laptop. He had a paper due on urban infrastructure, specifically drainage and tunnel systems. His professor had no idea that her student had spent 2 years living in the very systems he was now studying, or that he'd once used that knowledge to save 20 lives. But Leo knew, and every day, he worked to honor the second chance he'd been given. He volunteered at homeless shelters. He mentored kids in the foster system. He used his position with the Sentinels to push for positive change in the community, to prove that motorcycle clubs could be a force for good. The kid who'd once been invisible, who'd lived in shadows and survived on scraps, had become a man of substance and purpose. All because, 10 years ago, he'd seen something wrong and decided to act. All because he'd grabbed a key and refused to let go. Later that night, at the club meeting, Silas stood before the assembled sentinels and made an announcement. Brothers, as you know, I'm not getting any younger. I've been president for 22 years, and it's time to start thinking about succession. Murmurs rippled through the room. I'm not stepping down yet, Silas continued, but in 2 years, when Leo graduates, I'm proposing him as my successor. He's earned it. Saved this club before he was old enough to ride. Led by example every day since. Smart, loyal, and he actually reads the bylaws instead of just signing them. Laughter erupted. All in favor. 20 hands went up. Unanimous. Leo sat there, stunned. Popsy, I don't know what to say. Say you'll do it justice, Silas replied. Say you'll lead these men the way you'd want to be led. Leo stood, looked around at the faces of men who'd become brothers, who'd taken in a scared kid and made him family. I promise, he said. On my mother's memory and on the key that brought me here. I promise. The room erupted in applause. Tank clapped him on the back so hard he nearly fell over. Maria hugged him and cried happy tears. And as Leo looked around the clubhouse, at the family he'd found in the most unlikely of places, he couldn't help but think about that scared 10-year-old boy standing at a stoplight. He clutched in his hand, making a choice that would echo through the rest of his life. He'd grabbed the key to save 20 lives. But in the end, it had saved 21. His own.